Have you even tried the carnivore diet before you bashed the crap out of it? Hey, what's shaking bacon? My name is Bruno Panucci. I hope you're doing well. So you mentioned to people you're doing the carnivore diet and you get a lot of pushback. It's interesting because they didn't push back when they saw you eating a bunch of junk food and crap, but they push back when they see you eating a somewhat healthy diet, even though they have a distorted view of what a diet like this can do to a person because of what they've been told by healthcare professionals for years and years and years, which has all been based on really crappy science. It's basic reality of it. They're seeing otherwise, and you have to let your actions speak louder than your words when it comes to people criticizing you on this carnivore diet. So here's an interesting anecdote. I went on a few dates with this woman a few years ago, and she hated keto. She was all about the food pyramid, or the Canadian food guide, which is very similar to the American food guide. And she was 100% against anything like a keto diet. So I explained the carnivore diet like a bit of a keto diet, but a little more strict and extreme. For some reason, she hated keto. I don't know what it was. She was really condescending towards it. She hated it. And she just criticized the whole concept of being in a fat burning zone compared to using carbohydrates. Now, she felt that diet worked well for her. The one she was doing based on the Canadian food guide. She was a teacher and she was teaching it. So therefore she felt like she needed to believe in it. Now, just because you learn something from university or any institution doesn't mean it's accurate. It really doesn't. It's a sad reality of the world we live in. Our world is sort of corrupt. So usually there's a conflict of interest, and it doesn't hurt to learn a little bit more about what you're doing with your health. As it turns out, doctors have been given what little nutrition advice they have. They've been given really bad nutrition advice for years, and they're obligated to teach from the American or Canadian food guides. And that is turned out to be very bad science. And I'm going to get into another video about this in the near future. They push a mainly carbohydrate diet. With the vast majority of the population being pre-diabetic or diabetic, there should be little to virtually zero carbohydrates in the diet of those people that have those health problems. So right off the bat, most of these people are giving really piss poor nutrition advice, even though they have training or a certain amount of training in a separate field. Being a medical doctor doesn't make you a nutritional consultant by any means. In fact, I have more education as a massage therapist than many doctors do, based on the education they got when they were going through for their medical degree. So yeah, I have a lot more nutritional training than them. So anyway, back to the issue I had with this woman that I was dating. It was only a few dates, and she really started to annoy me because she was getting really condescending and arrogant about how what she felt she knew was right. And if you feel like you're doing something and it's working for you, great, keep on doing what's working for you. But if it's not working for you, or you're not feeling good when you're doing it, or you're not getting the results you need, it's time you have to troubleshoot and try and understand deeper what you're doing. And maybe what you're doing isn't right, or maybe you could tweak it a little bit to try and make it better for you. And she was just condescending. She thought what she knew was right. And even though I had more education and training than she did, and more importantly, more hands-on experience with doing a carnivore diet, she thought it was a ridiculously unhealthy diet. So either way, after a few dates, I broke off with her, and she called and she was asking for a sort of autopsy about why I broke off with her. And I explained to her, well, it just didn't work out. And she really pushed. She really wanted to understand why I wasn't interested. So I said, you know what? Honestly, the real reason, if I had to pick a reason, because really it was just two different personality types, but the real reason, the deepest one, was she was a jerk about something as simple as this way of eating. The interesting thing about that was I didn't care how she ate. She could eat whatever she wanted, but she had nothing but criticism about what I was doing because she felt like she knew better. And my answer to that was, you haven't even tried it. I sent you different articles. I sent you different testimonials. I sent you some information for some science based around this, when there was really not much science at the time on the carnivore diet. So like there was no science for her to disagree with that it was healthy or unhealthy, because there's virtually no science on the carnivore diet. So as soon as someone gets into a debate with you saying that that's a really unhealthy way to eat, you can argue back right off the bat saying, show me a study. Show me one study that says a carbohydrate-free diet is an unhealthy way to eat. Because there are no studies out there that talk about this. There's studies with carbohydrates and meat in the diet that might talk about how meat is bad. And most of the times, those studies are really full of holes. In fact, there's been more controlled studies that have come out in the last few years alone that talk about how meat isn't something you have to worry about. But when people start throwing their own bias at you, You can't debate somebody who's arguing passionately about something because logic never beats out passion. It just doesn't. And they haven't even tried what you're doing, even from an n=1 experiment point of view. They still are against what you're doing just on principle. Well, I get it if they're on principle of the fact that killing animals is immoral and they feel like that's wrong. That's a different issue. But when it comes to just meat is bad for you and carbohydrates are important in your diet and they have no understanding as to why that is, or worse off, they think they have an understanding about it because they've been looking at only one source of information that's more of a confirmation bias. What they don't understand is most of the people who have gotten to a carnivore way of eating have gotten there because they've tried all those other things. They've looked into all those other things. So they've not only researched it, they've put it into an experiment in lots of different ways, lots of different styles of eating, and they've landed on this carnivore way of eating. So you have to ask yourself, why do people do this? And why do people think that way? People are going to think whatever they want to think. Some people have to be in pain long enough before they try something as radical as cutting out carbohydrates completely, whether it's for a week or 3 months. I personally recommend doing it for at least 3 months so you can start to see most of the benefits. Most people will get weight loss if there's any weight loss that needs to be done. But more importantly than that, their inflammation will go away and most of their blood markers will get better and better and better through their tests because that inflammation starts dying off. So the big point I have is if you see somebody's being controversial with you over doing a carnivore diet or zero carb diet, I'm not going to try and convince anyone who's not interested though. If someone wants to debate or have an interesting conversation about something like this, I think it's kind of fun, really. But for the most part, I don't engage too often. I don't need to explain to someone who's not listening. There's no point in explaining anything to anyone that's not listening. It's throwing your pearls before the swine, if you know what I'm talking about. You don't need to do that. Don't waste your energy. Instead, let them come to you. Wait till you get all your results, and then they'll be coming to you and they'll really be curious about what you've done. But until they see that, then they get over that pride aspect of thinking, well, I don't want to encourage what they're doing because clearly it's wrong and I know better. And then after a while, they'll see you've been sustaining this weight loss or this level of health. At that point, eventually be curious and they'll want to ask you. They sometimes just don't know how, because by that point, they've sort of embarrassed themselves, possibly to you or other people, saying what you're doing is unhealthy, when really the frustrating part is usually they haven't even tried it. So there comes a time it's good to try and help someone if they're willing to listen, but there's no point in trying to convince someone if they're not willing to listen. It's just a waste of time. Anyway, thanks a lot. I hope you have a great day. Take care.